Hello and welcome to the Business of Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Eric Rosenberg. Over the years, I've had the privilege of helping businesses in the meetings and event industry grow and succeed. And I'm excited to share that experience with you. If you feel alone and overwhelmed, and if you're looking to take your business to the next level, improve your strategy and sales, and connect with like-minded professionals, you are in the right place. I invite you to visit eventbusinessformula.com and join our community of event business owners dedicated to exponential growth. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. And today I'm extremely happy to speak with Beth Lawrence. She has her own company. She's been in industry for 15, 20 years. And we're going to talk about her journey, and I'm sure it's going to resonate a lot with all of you, because guess what? She, like me, like a lot of entrepreneurs, have been going through a lot of things, the roller coaster of being an entrepreneur. So without further ado, Beth, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love when my story can resonate with others, and hopefully it will today.
I have no doubt for a little conversation we already have. Absolutely. And before we get to today, and as I was saying, the roller coaster of being an entrepreneur and specifically in our industry, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came to do what you're doing today.
I came sort of through a very back end route. So I was sort of born to do this. If you had asked my family, I came to college with a mission to be a writer and potentially a journalist and a professor of English. And I took one English class and said, I don't think I could picture myself doing this for the rest of my life. The professor mentioned teaching the same thing every year for 30 years. And I just thought, nope, my brain just shut off. So I really struggled for a little while of what I wanted to do. And when I came home to tell my parents, I told them I was going to transfer just after midway first semester. They're like, you're not transferring. You got to figure out what you want to do. So I was able to find event planning. And when I told my parents that that's what I wanted to major in, they said, well, you've been waking up every day early in the morning asking us what we were doing that day since we can remember. So it's pretty perfect for you. But I graduated in a really hard time, 2008, 2009, market crash,
Yep.
no event opportunities, sort of, I call it the rock climbing wall. So you just I had to grab the next, most stable thing that I could to get to where I wanted to go. So that meant everything from working for a property manager in West Philly and doing their building events and operations to working beautiful luxury facilities and with beautiful catering companies in Philadelphia. I worked for Dave & Buster's. I worked for a startup out of Austin. I worked for a restaurant. And along the way, I also did a lot of volunteering. So I sort of built my own career path non-traditionally. And always my thought process was, what can I do next to learn more? I really wanted to be well-rounded in the industry. And so I come from a very unique perspective because of that.
Wow. I'm listening to you, and the words that come to my mind are grit, perseverance, believe in yourself, and hustling.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
everything. I worked for the Club Med 1 year, between 2 years, the business school. Okay. I was, they call it GO, taking care of kids between 4 and 8 years old. We had 40 of them. We were 2. If you miss one, you'll be what they call charterized the next day.
Oh my God.
And I work in a restaurant, and I pull cables and in the factory. All those elements to me somehow are preparing us for what we're doing today.
Yes, exactly. And you should look at it that way. I think even from your first job, what can I learn here? I worked in a car dealership when I was a senior in high school, just doing some administrative tasks. And I learned everything I possibly could. I learned a little bit about sales, learned a little bit about business math, not enough, but I learned a little bit, enough to learn that I didn't want to do that full time. But yeah, everything that I did from part-time jobs to internships really have shaped me to who I am today. And I feel like if I didn't go into every single job with that thought process and with the overachieving nature of who I am, I don't know that I would be where I am today.
Absolutely. When did the entrepreneurial bug bite you, and you decided, you know what, I'm done working for others, I'm going to do it for myself?
It's funny you ask, because I was one of those people that when I was graduating as a senior, I wrote on, my resume that my mission one day was to own my own company. And one of my advisors said, don't write that. You want to put what your mission is for the job that you're applying for. You don't want to put that you don't want to work for them one day. So I think it always was in the back of my mind, but it was a confidence thing, right? I mean, I graduated, I've always been like a shot out of a cannon type of person, for lack of a better metaphor. Like I graduated ready to be in the industry, to kind of make a name for myself. And it was really challenging because there really wasn't that path. And so I don't know, it was just very interesting. It's always something that I've wanted. And then so I kind of built my career upon, like I said, learning as much as I possibly could, from the part-time jobs, literally like 2 hours to 4 hours a week, part-time jobs, to the contract roles, to everything volunteering that I did. I just kind of wanted to kind of grab everything that I could. And then I was at a role that I loved. It was a startup out of Austin. It was a health food startup. I helped launch it in Philadelphia, which is a market that I absolutely love. It's my home market. And I sort of told anyone that would listen, I was like, this is my favorite job ever. No matter what happens, whether they lay me off or whether I leave on my own accord, I think I want to do something on my own. And so when they laid me off 2 years in, just due to restructuring, my husband, actually, who I credit just with helping me to get the confidence to do a lot of what I've done, came home and he said, I'm not worried about you. Are you going to start your own business now? And so that's what I did. And I've had a couple long-term clients that I took in-house roles with, but I always looked at everything from an entrepreneurial lens. Even when I worked for other people, I wanted to know the big picture. I couldn't just know my concentration. I wanted to know the here and the why and the strategy and the everything. So I feel like I've always approached everything with that mindset, which may have been a little obnoxious to manage when I was younger, but I think it's a good effect now.
That's awesome. Well, obviously, you have a spouse who's very supportive. What, was everybody in your family and your friend circle supportive, or did you have people said, "Why are you doing this? Are you crazy?"
I'm very lucky that you mentioned grit and perseverance. My family and my close friends know that if I have my mindset on something, I'm going to do it. So I think my close friends and family were very supportive. Some did offer just options, right? Like you could take a full-time role. That I did have full-time opportunities offered to me within the first week that I was gone, that I was laid off from my role.
Mhm.
But one person said something that really stuck with me. They said, because I was applying for these full-time jobs and kind of starting a business, and they said, you can't put one foot in entrepreneurship. If you knowing what you want to do, you have to go all in. But I did have people, what I did was when I got laid off, I called basically the top 20 people in my contact list that were my contacts. And I just told them what happened. I scheduled either virtual or in-person time with them over the 2 weeks subsequent to me being laid off. And half of those people, I would say, were like, why would you start your own business? There's so many event planning companies. What do you bring to the table that's unique? And some of them I think were coming from a good place, but I ignored them. And it's important to know where people are coming from. If someone has worked for a company and grown for 20 years, their advice is going to be very different than someone who has not had that opportunity. Like I have not had that opportunity. So I also kind of took into consideration that they still cared about me, but their lens was a little bit different.
Absolutely. It's so true what you're saying. And also, I would add to that those different categories of people, the one that always dream of doing what you're doing. And somehow, I'm not that jealous, but they're frustrated that I always said for many different settings, people will choose misery over uncertainty. And a lot of
Yes.
people would stay in where they are, in corporate America, in associate, whatever, because they don't know about what can happen.
Absolutely. And uncertainty is how they keep us in our roles a lot of the time. The fear of what's next, because there is a real fear. There's a lot of real risk in what we're doing. And I didn't make 100% great decisions the first couple of years of my business. I flailed a little bit, but I think it was important that I learned those lessons, just like I learned lessons when other people had their name on my business card.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we don't learn without mistakes, and that's how you look at it. I don't know who said that I either win or learn.
Ooh, that's great. I love that. I need to remember that when I learn.
Right. Is there anything that you were frustrated with when you were not working for yourself that you say, that I will never do it? Or is it something that, this is amazing when I have my business, this is exactly what I will do?
Yeah, I definitely think the transition from being expected to be in a seat 8 to 5 plus every day versus in some of my roles before I went on my own, the two right before, it was really, I don't care where you are physically as long as you get your goals done. And especially when I was a regional, I couldn't be sitting in the same place. I loved not having to go to the same place every day. So that's something that I knew. I also never really liked micromanaging. I don't like being hired and then being kind of made to feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Obviously, there's a learning curve and I need to be taught, but there were some managers that you could tell that they were just comfortable with me being in a certain place and a certain place only. And so, one thing that I always also thought was, how can I help bring other people up in a way that I necessarily wasn't nurtured or given those opportunities for a career path at my roles? And so, those are two things that I thought about. And third, and this is going to sound crazy, but I was in sales and I was making a lot of money for other people. And I just remember thinking, if I can make money for other people, potentially, as long as I can learn to hone in on what it is I do and why it is I do it and my value, I can really sell the heck out of myself. And sometimes I prove that right, and sometimes I prove that wrong.
Yeah,
But
but
like I said, I learned those lessons, and now I sit here learning, having learned those lessons and coming from a place of being able to look back and say, okay, I did that. That was a little bit of a silly choice, or whatever the case may be.
yeah, I don't know any entrepreneur that started a business and went straight line into success and said it doesn't happen like that.
Hmm.
But I have a friend, a mentor, who one day told me, because I had doubts as anyone who started their own business, and he said, to your point about sales and others, he said, do you want to build your dream or do you want to keep on building someone else's dream? And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, end of conversation. I know what I'm doing. And it doesn't prevent me from having face many times and still some days the imposter syndrome, where I'm
Hmm.
thinking, I'm going to do this. What am I? Why me? Well, when I became chair of MPI, I remember the first meeting I had on my left somebody who was the head of the largest AV production company, and on my right, the head of one of the largest hotel company. And I'm
Hmm.
thinking, here I am, this guy from Belgium with several millions in revenue, and that's it. What am I doing here? And quickly you realize that you are there for a certain role,
Yeah.
and just focus on that. When did you had, if you had, in your life, imposter syndrome, and how do you overcome it?
I continue to have it. I think sometimes it creeps up when you're not realizing it and you kind of like, oh, where did that come from? But I definitely think starting out my business, there was a bit of imposter syndrome because you're coming from a place of being laid off. So you're coming from a place of someone saying no to you for whatever reason. And then the next day, I remember I had to speak on a panel as the president of a nonprofit membership association. I had to speak and I had no business card to give out. And it was the weirdest feeling in the world because it's like, who am I to be talking about success when I just got laid off? So that was one example. And that did actually translate, unfortunately, to me not really being able to share my value in a real way in the first year or two when I look back. But I think with time and with experience and learnings, I think you get more accustomed to those little bits and pieces of times where you feel like you're failing and it doesn't necessarily feel like the world is collapsing. But similar to what you're saying, I was awarded in 2024 twice. I was awarded a top 50 voices and events award. And I received the email and my first thought was this meant for me? This can't be, this has to be a pay to play. It just was because to your point, the list was like Julius Solaris and the head of CVent. And I'm like, I just started a business 7 or 8 years ago, and I happen to love what I do and talk about it a lot on LinkedIn. And I was so grateful, but at the same time, I felt so humbled and almost like if I were in a room with all of these people, I would think, why in the world am I here? But then you have those friends and family that I mentioned that really are always going to sing your praises and say, like, exactly what you said, you're in this room for a reason. And that reason is because it has something to do or everything to do with who you are and what you bring to the table, not what those people bring to the table, which is something unique and special and phenomenal, but it's different.
Absolutely. I love so much your example. I have a friend, Susan Ford Collins, wrote a book, The Joy of Success. And
Hmm.
are you familiar with her?
I am. Yeah.
So, one of the things that Susan said is that you have to have your success file. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what you're describing. Then, when you have those moments that we all have, think
Yeah.
about how far you've come already and
Oh,
what
I
you've
have
done.
that. I have a file right behind me. It's called Career Mementos, and I still have the first card I was ever given by a client when I did a bat mitzvah, which I had never attended, let alone planned in my life. And I was so nervous and I really wanted to make it super special. And they were over the moon. They were very picky clients, which I loved because I'm super picky and I have high standards. So I still have that. And that was from probably 2010. But I also have cards that clients have written me recently, and it does help. And I have a digital version of that too, because testimonials aren't just for external use. They really can sometimes pick you up when you feel like, man, what am I doing this for?
I love it. And I didn't know about the bar mitzvah, but I admire being Jewish. I always refuse to plan those. So kudos to you. And
Thank
dealing
you.
with the families and the seating plans. Whoa, that's
It was a
amazing.
phenomenal learning experience and they were a wonderful family. So I'm I did a lot of weddings too in my time as a luxury catering and event operations person. And I tell you, I learned so much. It was so invaluable. And one of the things I learned is that social events are not my thing. So I don't do social events any longer, but they taught me
Exactly.
a lot. And the impeccable amount of detail and care that you have to have is something I carry with me.
What are you focusing on specifically in terms of your niche and your clients?
Mhm. Event logistics and stakeholder experience. And typically it's for traditional nonprofits, sometimes foundations, sometimes associations. And I've worked with a few kind of larger name clients as well. And I'm lucky that my work has spanned the entire United States. I've done some work in Canada, and that's just the events that I've done on my own and not in collaboration. So it's funny. Most of my clients have multi-year agreements. I work with my clients on everything from strategy through to the event execution, logistics, and the follow through the post event. And really, we pick up right after the post event and try to use those learnings and move to the next year. So typically, the clients are making an impact. That's why when you look at my website, it says events that inspire and deliver, because you have to inspire folks to hear your message, to learn what you're sharing with them, but also you have to deliver on results. You can't just have
Yeah.
an inspirational. As much as I love an inspirational moment, you have to also be able to say, okay, well, what did you take away that you brought with you into your daily life? If there's nothing, then we need to work on the impact.
Absolutely. Back then in Belgium, when I started my business, people told me exactly the same as you, that really, there's already so many companies. And then I quickly realized that on one hand, most of my competitor were only focusing on the logistics and asking questions on the logistics. But
Hmm.
also on the client side, when I would ask a sales director, why do you do a sales meeting? And the answer was, oh, because we do it every year. I'm thinking like, oh my God,
Oh no, we just melt when we hear that, don't we? It's like, no.
right? So helping them understanding the strategy and helping them align the meetings and the face to face with the strategy, that's where you're
Yes.
winning.
Yeah, my favorite thing is to work with leadership, to your point. And not only leadership, but their teams as well. Look, the committee meetings and the department meetings of the entire marketing department or the sales department. If we're doing a gathering, every stakeholder has slightly different goals. And if
Mm.
we don't understand that, then we're not going to speak to them in the right way. We're not going to prepare them for the event in the right way. And we're not going to deliver on their expectations. That goes from speakers, attendees, sponsors, media, exhibitors, partners. And I think looking at the event from, like I said, I've always needed to see the big picture to look at the details. So I have to look at that big picture for the organization and then say, okay, now that I understand your big picture goals, let's figure out how this event can make those happen or move them forward, at least to whatever milestone we agree upon.
Well, one of the mistake I made at the beginning was not being assertive enough with the client. When
Me
they will tell,
too.
sorry?
Me too. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you. I made the
no,
same
no.
exact mistakes.
They will tell me, oh, and in those 3 days sales meeting, we want to convey this and this, and they're like 5 messages. And I was thinking, but that's not possible. You're not going to succeed in that. But I was afraid to tell them, and
Yep.
of course, it didn't work.
No,
Uh, and
I
so it's
know.
only when I put myself in their shoes, but also as an advisor, that things were started to change.
Yeah.
Can you share some of the example of how you've been helping clients and basically being yourself and helping them?
Yes, absolutely. It's funny. I hate a bubble burster in real life. Like I hate when I say I love, I don't know, reality TV and someone's like, "Ugh, I hate reality TV." It's like just, if you hate it, that's fine, but maybe play along a little bit. But I sometimes have to be the person that is we have the dream conversation, right? That's what I love. I love ideating and it's like, okay, if resources weren't an object, what would we want to do? Because I think those conversations are important for a future, for planning, for just getting you in a place where you're excited about the event. But I also have to do the feasibility. Then we have to look at, okay, resources are a real thing. Time is a real thing. Amount of people on your team is a real thing. And amount of resources, hard fees and income and resources you can dedicate to the event. And I think that's really a lot of the times, that's where I gain their respect, because I'm not just going to tell you yes. And I think to your point in the beginning, I have kind of two distinct people inside of me. I guess everybody has multiple, but I have an artist and a creative and a dreamer, and then I have the business person. And the creative and the dreamer would take over and be like, I can see this. It's going to be great. Not thinking, okay, this is 6 months from now. They don't have a sponsorship deck yet. They don't know where they're having this. Like, the impossibility wouldn't even sink in. And to your point, I would get so excited that I would want to inspire their vision, but I wouldn't take it into that feasibility step as far as I could. And now I am much more quick to say, okay, well, you want to do a first time conference and you want to do it in 4 months, and you don't have a location or speakers or sponsors or even a committee to help you plan it yet. You haven't even hired a planner yet. I don't think that's going to happen. Or if it is, it's not going to happen in the way that you envision it. Here's how I think it could happen, or here's an alternative that I think you
Love
could
it.
do. I think in 4 months, you could do a great networking happy hour to galvanize people around what you're planning potentially in the fall, because then it gives you 3 more months to get your sponsors together, to get your committee together. And they actually wound up listening to me and having an extremely successful event this fall rather than rushing it in June, when also something that I told them on this call, this advisory call, was the Philadelphia market is really not around when you want to have this conference. Everyone's at the beach. So if you're going to do this first time and you want it to be really impactful, you should do it this time and in this format. And so I think that there are times where it stinks having to be the person to say, oh, wait a minute, or what about, or have you considered? But it's those moments that will save you from running out of food at an event, or from not having enough sponsors. And then all of a sudden your budget just doubled and now you're personally taking out of your pocket on a first time event. Like, these are real repercussions that I want to try to shield my clients from. And then from there, it's the strategy. It's like, okay, now the tactics, how are we going to actually make it happen? Because I do, at the end of the day, want to make the event or the vision happen for them, or I want them to meet their goal and use an event to meet that goal. But it just might not be exactly what they have in their mind. And that's something that I've had to be okay with. That's been hard.
Why is it being hard?
It's hard because you want to, as a business owner, say yes to money. You want, as a business owner, to be the person that says yes to that person and encourages them to meet their vision. I don't like when people tell me I can't do something. It's no fun. But I've also hired people before to do a job, and then they sort of, like you said, not relying on me to be the expert, but kind of like putting it back in my court. And I'm thinking, why are you putting it back in my court? I hired you because you're the expert in this. I'm not the expert in
Mm.
whatever this is. And so it's hard to have hard conversations, frankly, especially when you're just getting to know a client. But I think those hard conversations prevent you from having real mistakes or hard conversations later, potentially with sponsors or people that have funded your event and it didn't come out the way that they thought it was going to.
Totally agree. And by the way, that's the moment to have the hot conversations at the beginning,
Yes.
because immediately you will see if they want to work with you, and then
Hmm.
you set the right expectation, or they don't, and you're saving times and trouble down the road.
Yep, exactly. And sometimes saying no to one opportunity, it saves both of you, right? Because sometimes there is another a planner that may take that and be able to roll with it the way that the client wants. It may work out, it may not, but at least the client then has their opportunity to go through or to look for other like-minded people to partner with, and then you can do the same thing. I know that when you say no to the wrong things or the misaligned things, I shouldn't say wrong because there's no good or bad, the misaligned things,
Mm.
an aligned thing will find you. It's just a matter of time, and it's a game, it's a gamble sometimes, but that's what entrepreneurship is.
Yeah, it is. And the sales is also a game at some stage. At the end of the day, I think that's also where you're most aligned with your values. And that's where you are successful in the long run. I don't see any
Yes.
other way to do that.
Yes, absolutely. And then when you find true alignment, that's why I have multi-year clients now, because there's a true alignment there. And I understand that I'm an integral part of their planning team. And I also get that it's a partnership. I get that their success is my success. All the vendors' success is my success because that's
Yeah.
the client's success.
Have you fired a client ever?
Yes.
How was
Really hard and the best lesson I've ever learned. I've fired multiple clients. Sometimes I look back and think, this was the reason it got to the point that it got where you fired them is because you didn't set the boundary in the beginning, or there was a misalignment in the contract and you chose to ignore it, or what have you. There are times where I can look back and I can say, you played your role in that. And then there were other clients where it just literally wasn't going to work. The feasibility dwindled every single day. And it was an extreme misalignment in our working styles. And it was a mutual agreement. I initiated it, but it was a mutual agreement. And it was really hard because I liked people to like me. And so when you tell someone, I'm so sorry, this isn't working out, and you have a contract behind you to have to negotiate whatever that looks like, it's no fun. But at the end of the day, again, I think that particular situation, I left with an immense amount of respect for that person. Just because they don't have the same working style as me doesn't mean they're a bad person. And I hope they left with an amount of respect for me because I was able to kind of meet them where I thought was fair in the contract, where I wasn't taking more than I gave and they weren't out more money than was fair for them. So it's hard, but I think at the end of the day, those are the lessons that got me the good clients, the aligned clients. Again, I shouldn't say good clients, the aligned clients that I have now, and the newer situations that brought me to this stage in my entrepreneurship, which is a stage that was necessary for me to be in and to kind of move through where I was to get where I am now. So I have respect for all the clients that I fired, and I hope that they have respect for me.
That's phenomenal. That's probably one of the greatest explanation I've ever had. So
Thank you.
kudos to you. You cannot please everyone.
No, no.
And the market is so big, you will always find people that want to work with you and those that,
Mhm.
to your point, they're not bad or good. They're just not the people that you want to spend your life with in the
Right.
business.
Right. Exactly. And I think there's people told me to niche down in the beginning when I started my business. This is also a lesson for everyone, especially if you get laid off. I started my business and I was so thinking about the money that was in, or lack thereof, that was in my bank account, and trying to just think like, I'll do everything. I'll do sales, I'll do events, I'll do marketing, I'll do PR, and then no one knew what to hire me for because they were like, I don't get how any of these intersect and you're only one person. So how are you doing all of these things? And very quickly, I realized that events are my first love. I don't like event marketing as much as I like the logistics and the stakeholder experience and creating what's happening. I'm not as well versed in PR and I don't know crisis communications. And there are professionals that should be doing those things. And I find a personal conflict with sales and selling, for example, sponsorship and working with multiple nonprofits. That's a conflict for me because I have access to all of my nonprofit stakeholders and I would never mismatch them. But I just think it's a recipe. Even if I did it accidentally, I think it would be a recipe for disaster. But as soon as I niched down, the right clients started to find me. And I started to be able to say, no, this doesn't work, but here's who I can refer you to. And my business and my network started to thrive even more because I know people that are masters of their craft and communication. That's who I should recommend my clients to, not me, who would probably ask them for advice while I was doing it. So I think that's
Yeah.
also a really big lesson to people that are listening, especially if you've gotten laid off. Really, truly, you don't have to niche all the way down, right? I didn't niche all the way down to nonprofits and impact driven organizations or causes till a couple of years ago. And I still expand every once in a while. But I think you should niche down a little bit so that people know what in the world you do in one sentence.
Couldn't agree more. I'm coaching the accelerator program for EO,
Oh,
Entrepreneurs
I love
Organization.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's great program, great people. And I have every year a group of entrepreneurs that are mostly not in our industry. I sometimes have one person from our industry. That's it.
Mhm.
And when I decided last year to go all in helping small business owners in our industry, people were asking me, yeah, but why not any small business owners? I said, listen, 80% is probably the same, but
Mhm.
this is the industry I love. This is the industry I understand the most. And this is the industry where I started several business before. So that's why it's niching down. But it's sometimes very hard because you're looking at other opportunities,
Yeah.
and kudos to you to stick with that. Now, with everything that is happening today in the world. And I do believe that AI is a wonderful opportunity. But in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of people that will lose their job, will have to do something different.
Mhm.
What is your advice for someone who's being laid off
Mm.
and who's looking at the next thing they should be doing?
Okay. This is what I do. I can only tell you what I've done and what I've learned from helping others who've been in similar situations. I got laid off on a Wednesday. It was effective that evening. So that was also really hard for me because I had never been fired, laid off, nothing. So, and I didn't do anything wrong, but it just kind of felt like, what do I get up and do tomorrow? So I knew that I had to feel the feelings. So I gave myself 2 days to cry and the weekend, basically. I gave myself 2 business days and then the weekend to cry. And then Thursday, so this was Thursday, the day after, I had a networking event. I started to tell people. I had called people immediately when I got laid off at noon. Basically, I called all of my networking contacts, the ones that I made myself that I knew would come wherever I would go. And I just told them what was happening. Like I said, I made appointments, both virtual and in person, and just told them what happened and what I was thinking. I listened. I took notes. I didn't take in all of it, but I listened. And it allowed me to help formulate a plan. It allowed me to help feel like had some momentum. I immediately, like divine intervention, when I got laid off, I logged into Facebook, I remember, and there were 2 workshops that were being offered. One was making your own website, and 2 was making your business legally legit. And they were $30 total for both of them. And I signed up right away. I mean, that was divine intervention, but now there's so many places that you can look for advice. There's Masterclass, there's Coursera, there's local small business associations and chambers of commerce, but get advice from wherever you absolutely can. And then you have to figure out what you want. What do you want to do next? Do you want to
Mm,
manage people? Do you want to work for yourself, work for someone else, do a little freelancing, do a little of both? Do you want to take a little bit of time? Can you afford to take a little bit of time and really think about what you want to do or get a career coach? I couldn't afford to do any of those things. So what I did was basically chose a path and went head on for it. And I think that that's the best advice that I can give. And if you know that this is your path, no one's going to be able to deter you. And what's funny, this is something I may have told on a podcast before, but after I got laid off, I was setting up all my desk and everything in my home. And I found a small calendar book from my bag that I used to take to my startup job before I got laid off. And it was a little calendar that I had taken, a notebook that I had taken with me to Biz Bash. It was the Biz Bash conference. And I was taking notes and I was so inspired by so many of the experiential and event speakers that I wrote, my name is Beth Lawrence and I own my own events and experiential company. And I circled it. That's something that my friends and I do, to my high school friends, shout out to them, to manifest. I wrote that in November of 2017, the calendar, and I circled it. I got laid off November 8th
ah,
of 2017. So I knew what I wanted to do, but if you don't, I think it's critical to take time to find that out, even if you take part-time jobs to take in income in the
yeah,
meantime.
that's awesome. I remember when I decided to start my business. I left an amazing job in finance and marketing to get
Mm.
into partnership with a couple I had met on the holidays. And 10 months
Wow.
later, I had to resign because I realized that one of the person didn't want to have a business partner. And so on
Ooh.
my way driving home, I was like, why did I do that? Did I make a mistake? What's going to happen in my life? And by the time I arrived to my apartment, I said, okay, I'm going to start my own business. And
I
I
love it.
had the chance that my grandfather, who was far from being a billionaire, I would say, listen, you don't have to worry about eating or sleeping for a year. And
Oh,
then I
wow.
had 2 first client, amazing people I knew. But one thing that helped me as well, besides trusting the guts and said, this is what I want to be doing, I was listening to 2 music, but probably 50 times a day. The first one
Oh,
was Mission Impossible.
I love that.
And the second one was Kajanin, who happened to be a neighbor. She was singing in Swahili a cover song of I'm Free from Stevie
Oh,
Wonder. And she was saying, I'm
wow.
free, sina mali, sina deni. I'm free without any fortune, but without any debt. And
Oh, I
that will
love
give me
that.
so much energy. And still
Yeah.
today, I love those songs. But So what is the dream? How do you see your company in 10 years?
I would love to work with more organizations who are doing great things for the planet. You mentioned AI. I love AI. I think it's, we can't stop it, right? I mean, it's like the internet. It's just going to
Right.
be in our lives. But I think there's a critical way we can look at it when it comes to the environment. So that's something that I would really like to find more organizations, like ethical tech organizations, that look at things like that, especially as it relates to our industry, which has a large carbon footprint as it is. I think I would really love to take my business more global. Like I said, I've done things all over the country, in Canada as well, but I would love to plan more global experiences and incentive trips, and multi-day conferences are really where it's at. And eventually I would love to plan something in the music industry, whether that be an award ceremony like the Grammys, or a tour, or something like Coachella. Music inspires me endlessly. In fact, I went to a concert when I was 13. It's the Dave Matthews Band, which is probably
Oh, yeah.
probably the most basic quote unquote thing about me is that I love them very much. I've been to about 40 of their shows. And I remember
Wow.
looking around and thinking, all of these people are here to watch this one act, and we are all here and we have this thing in common. And that's why we're all here. And it was just such a cool feeling. And I think that was my first real feeling of community. Like in my chest, I felt like, wow, I'm part of a larger community. And that was one of the things that inspired me and continues to inspire me with events, is bringing people in to the fold, whether that's, again, learning, if you're a scientist or a doctor presenting something at a conference, like if really learning truly things that can change the world, if you're learning tactics to apply to your business, if you're meeting people that could widen your circle, I think that all reverberates and it creates a larger community. And in the end, I think we'll create a better world the more that people can gather together, share ideas, and find commonality. That's just something that continues to inspire me.
My goodness, if only you were passionate.
I've been told I should run for office, and I was like, I don't want anything to do with that. But yes, I'm definitely a passionate individual.
I love it. And you have such clarity about where you're going. So
Yeah.
I'm sure this is going to happen. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Beth, I truly enjoy our conversation today. Time flies. And I have two last questions for you. The first
Great.
one is, how do people get in touch with you?
I think the best way is my website, which is bethlawrence.com. So it's very easy to remember. And then LinkedIn, Beth Lawrence CMP, and it's LAWRENCE. I'm sure it's in the show notes, but I like to specify that. LinkedIn and my website are the two best ways to follow what I'm doing and get in touch with me. I do have Instagram as well. It's at BethLawrence_events.
Wonderful. Thank you. And my last question, when we meet next year at this time with a bottle of champagne, what are we going to celebrate?
We are going to be celebrating record-breaking revenue for my company.
Wonderful. Beth, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you in person at the industry conference.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business of Meeting podcast. I hope you found today's episode valuable. If you enjoyed the show, the most important thing you can do is leave a review and share it with your colleagues. It really helps spread the word. I truly appreciate your support. And if you're ready to take your business to the next level, don't forget to visit eventbusinessformula.com to learn more about how we are helping even business owners like you. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.